the next thing that I want to take a look at is we want to look at the gradebook example and conditional formatting. So one thing that we can do when you first look at this gradebook example, it looks like there's a lot going on, and maybe we want to try to separate the data in a way that's a little bit more recognizable or friendly. So one thing I can do is if I click on format, you're going to see this conditional formatting here. I'm going to select, so just the final grade row. Um, we're going to use the conditional formatting to separate these grades. So I'm going to click on format and do conditional formatting. And right now there's a default here for a single color. What I want to actually do is I want to make the colors change based on the entry. So if it's an A, we can leave it green. B would have its own color, C, D, F for all the grades. And so what we have to do is for our rules, whenever we're going to have an entry, we're going to put that the text contains a certain value. So in this case, I have to just make my first one here is to put A. Okay, so then whenever there is A that's entered as the text in the cell, that's going to show up with this rule of being a green letter. Now, one thing that we could do is maybe we want to change it so that we don't have the first cell showing up that way as well. In our range, what we might have to do as you're working with your own is just swap that out. So because this is column K, row 1, that's just the final grade heading. We don't need that to be color coded. So I'm going to change my range from K1 to K2. Okay. And then now it's gone. On that same note, depending on how you want to do this, you could do the whole row so that any new students will, that rule will follow. It goes all the way down to 1014 there, you can see. What I could do too is I could just select 31. That could be my final row that I am working with. And so then it's just going to be for this area here. Okay, so it all just depends on how you want it to operate. If it's a data entry where you've got a ton that you're going to continue to put in, it's good to put those rules in place because then the color coding will just occur whenever it reads that you've put in a certain entry.
And freezing that first row when you start adding names below it too is a good little tip. So then you can scroll and not lose what your column headings are.
Yep, exactly. And so that's a good point because then you can continue to just look through this data and this will stay. That's what you're saying, right, Jeremy? Okay. And so for this too, the entries are already there. Whereas maybe I make this rule beforehand so that when I put the entries in, that's ideally what I want to happen. It's, not that it's bad retroactively, but still it's to be able to think about the data that I've got to put in later on and have my rules set in place so that it makes my life a bit easier. So the second one is if we could then so this is for A. I'm going to add another rule for this range that is going to put in, and don't be confused here too. When you add another rule, it will focus on that rule. You're not on the same one still, so don't be afraid to then change this to B and change your color. So for this one, we can put in that. Don't be confused when that happens. You'll be able to see all your conditional format rules when you're done, but within this window, it's going to still say A. Just swap it out for the new rule. You can even change like what rule you're working with. either way. But then same thing will happen. You'll notice I'll hit add another rule for the C's and B will stay there. And so will my color. So I just want to swap those out and I want to put in my new rules here. Okay, and then I don't have any D's in this, so I'll just show you the one more here. We will do a blue for that. That's really dark. Actually, let's do this. I had clicked add a new rule, so I'll just do done. And then let's see here. There's my rules. When I had done it initially, I clicked add new rule. So this is actually a good thing to show too, because if you accidentally did that like I did, I have two Fs that are competing for that. So I want to just check my format rules within this range. And then I don't need this one, so I would just delete that. Okay, because you can kind of see it was overriding, that first rule was overriding the second color. So that happened by accident, but it's a good thing to show anyway. So yeah, so hopefully that can help with your organization, the way you look at your grade books or other things that you're working with. And Jeremy had some good tips earlier for some of that too, especially with the charts, being able to make charts off of these, and utilizing all these features for your Google Sheets.
Yeah, and I think getting in there and playing around with them, and experimenting with what you can and can't do, and there's always that edit undo button if it does something you don't want it to.